Easter is about so many things, but for Christians, it's today's Resurrection Sunday.
Both campaigns hoping for a touch of that resurrection magic after a shaky first week.
And how old is he?
He's 3.
He's 3.
So they don't get to vote yet.
The coalition continues to take fire over the transphobic comments from its Warringah candidate, its failure to move on an integrity commission and the $500,000 settlement to Rochelle Miller after allegations of bullying and harassment by a current government MP.
Will you now commit to reveal details of this settlement to the public so taxpayers can know why they are shelling out all this money?
This process is a confidential process. I think that's the way those matters should be handled.
Meanwhile, Labor, sick of endless questions about Albanese's earlier gaffes, kindly provided a fresh one.
Do you support the retention of temporary protection visas?
Yes. Earlier on, I heard half the question. We don't support temporary protection visas.
Both leaders kicked off Easter Sunday in church, the PM following up his Easter service in Sydney by announcing Anne Ruston will take over the health portfolio in the event of the government's re-election.
Can you rule out any cuts to Medicare as Health Minister if you're elected?
Look, our government has been absolutely clear that we are not cutting Medicare. In fact, I think our track record in terms of the increased spending across all elements of our healthcare system stand for themselves.
This appointment today should send a shiver down the spine of every Australian who relies on affordable healthcare.
Healthcare now very much on the coalition's agenda after previously announcing an Easter truce.
Easter's not about politics.
Scott Morrison decided, hey, maybe it is after all.
$273.1 million to expand the CGM initiative. That will mean that every single person who has type 1 diabetes will have access to that scheme.
That didn't sit too well with the opposition.
I do know that the Prime Minister had said that this wasn't going to be a day of usual campaigning.
But Labor quickly made it a wash, matching the pledge to slash the cost of glucose monitoring devices. Hopeful news for type 1 diabetics, regardless of the election outcome. But with the Easter armistice well and truly over, will it be all guns blazing as we head into week 2?
Gotta go, they're playing my favourite song.
Yes, and only 5 weeks to go. That's all, 5 weeks to go. It's quite clear. You look at look at Scott Morrison. He obviously finds campaigning much easier than running the country out there. It's. I guess he's been helped along by Alba on this one totally, but it's like he's gone to the football for the last week. He's like when he's out after Cronulla, but having a beer and smiling, and I don't think he can believe where he's going. But it's also so controlled. I mean, of all those that I've seen over the years, this one we haven't yet seen Mr Morrison out with the public. He hasn't really had to answer questions as he did when he came back for the bushfires when he'd been in Hawaii, and also when in Lismore for the floods and those sorts of things where random questions come out. And so while it's controlled beautifully like this first week or so, he's having a ball.
And he's clearly been doing his homework. I've never heard so many numbers come out of a Prime Minister's mouth as they have since the gaffe earlier in the week by Anthony Albanese. And we've got some breaking news on Sydney Morning Herald and Age poll that's just come out that shows that Albanese's really dropped as preferred PM just in the space of a week.
Yes, it does. We look at that one that in a week, last week, Albanese was leading the Prime Minister by 38 to 30. And after this week's debacle, this last week, the PM is now leading 37-36. So it's a drop of 8 points, which is extraordinary in 1 week.
I think it's the other way around.
Okay.
Morrison's now leading Albanese 38 to 30.
That's what I meant. Yeah, it's gone.
It's absolutely extraordinary. You have interviewed, I think, every Prime Minister since Menzies, Ray.
I was very young.
Did you? You've watched these two. Obviously, the nation's looking at Albanese right now and sizing him up for that job. Do you think, on the face of what we're seeing, that he's up to it?
Well, I don't think so. What we've seen, he obviously doesn't like campaigning the way Scott Morrison loves campaigning, and the great campaigners like Gaffe and really Bob Hawke, for that matter, again, loved campaigning, loved being up with the people. Up to now, it's as I say, we're only 1 week into it, but it just seems that the social media thing is the control of the candidates. There's no really public forums at the moment. I think we've got the first debate this Wednesday. And that'll be very controlled. It's the way social media and I think the campaign managers are controlling them. So the very figures, I mean, all the ministers who've spoken, and there's only half a dozen this last week, they all tried out the same figures. They're like regurgitating these figures out there. So clearly they've been told, stick to the point, don't wander.
The fascinating thing, it just goes to show how important these campaigns are, and someone as seasoned as Scott Morrison at getting messages across, clearly working in their favour. But Labor was so far ahead just 1 week ago. So 1 week of an election campaign can wipe out 3 years of lived experience for a lot of voters who've seen gaffe after gaffe after possible lie after possible lie from Scott Morrison. 1 week may have wiped all of that out.
Yes, certainly all the problems he had with women's issues for those 3 years, the NDI spend, the lack of voice for Aboriginal people, I think aged care, the treatment, the fact that so many people died in aged care without being injected and that sort of stuff. All this, and the sports rorts and those sorts of things, nothing surfaced. It's just been a matter of Albo's mistakes.